welcome everybody to our another very interesting conversation today with Jamie Lee. So Jamie is a UX lead at Immersion Group South Africa. She is fascinated by the psychology and science behind the design. She continuously aims to develop her skills in enhancing digital customer experiences for organizations across the globe. So please, Jamie, go ahead, and the stage is yours.
Great, thanks. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I can see your presentation. Great.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. So, thanks for the kind introduction. Hi guys. So, as you guys heard and can see, my name is Jamie. I'm part of an international consultancy called Immersion Group. We've got clients in various different disciplines and industries, but primarily focusing in financial and healthcare services. So I've played lots of different roles in Immersion Group, ranging from a design lead more recently. And that's really working with clients, embedding ourselves into their in-house design teams, and really solving interesting problems and working on great projects. Another role that I've recently started playing was the role of a UX practice lead. And that's really heading up our UX capability. So as part of my bio, you guys might have read it or not, but I come from a small town called Piet Retief in South Africa. I grew up there, I went to school there, and it was interesting. You kind of never know that you would make it as a big city girl working as a consultant. Nevertheless, knowing about disciplines such as UX or UI or service design or CX. And in my way, the only way that I ever felt that I would succeed was to say, how can I be really great? How can I, push the bar and think outside the box and, think differently to how other people has before. So I really wanted to just stand out from a crowd. Moving to the city to study, it got even worse because there were so many people. And how did I alleviate myself? So this holds true for studying as well as my career. And I suppose I've always just wanted to be anything but ordinary. And today I really want to share with you guys, personal stories and ways to stand out in a design profession and see how we can innovate and evolve as a design community to kind of get ahead of the game. So I'll start with an interesting question today. Do you guys feel like a mediocre designer? Do you create like boring designs from day to day and, same old processes, project after project, stuck between mediocrity and traditions? And I felt like that when I started my career, right? And I want to share a very personal story with you guys. So um, the first time that I went into a project, my line manager gave me a brief and he said, okay, cool, you can go and design some screens for us. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. And I really dug deep into it. Like I wanted to create something mind-blowing and, industry defining and something so new and innovative that no one thought about. And I wanted to change the world with my very first design. And the feedback that I got quite stumped me because my line manager back then told me, you didn't consider the rules. You broke all the rules. And I asked him, like, what do you mean? And he said, like, you didn't consider any users, mental models, patterns, competitors, standards. What did you do? and I kind of went silent for a bit and thought about it, and he was right. I broke all the rules, and I didn't consider those things. So I kind of quickly reeled myself in, and I realized I kind of had to make a mind shift, right? I needed to follow some rules and solve for user problems, not my problems. Thinking back, I was solving for my problem. I wanted to be like ahead of the curve and stand out, not user problems. So fast forward a couple of months, I realized I was creating design copy and pastes. I did things the way competitors do it, and standards and norms have defined it, and traditions that were created, and it was new in the project and surely for the company, but it was old in the industry. And reflecting back, I suppose that was the time that I was being molded into this perfect little designer, stuck in my ways, stuck in my designs and process. And shortly after that, I actually left to the consultancy, and it became even worse. It always felt to me like clients expected you to come up with great solutions and great designs, and I felt like, well, if I'm following all of these rules, how can I be great? I really wanted to deliver to their expectations. So as a designer, I was told from early on in my career to follow a process, and we'll speak about the process that we follow in a bit. But if you kind of had to ask anyone that I've worked with previously, they'll tell you I'm a stickler for rules. And I realized at that point, I can bend the rules. But what I always made a conscious effort of was to know that for me to bend the rules, I had to know the rules. So I had to become technically very strong in order to bend the rules. And similarly with process, I can change the process, but in order to change the process, I have to know the process. So I had to know the process like the back of my hand. And, at the end of the day, I wanted to craft great experiences and not just design easily usable ones. And that's when I realized how much I enjoyed coloring outside of the lines. And when I decided I don't want to think like just another designer. So today I want to chat to you about how we can break free of this perfect little designer mold that we've been in. And I'll be doing it in two parts. Part one, really saying how do we innovate on products? And part two, how do we innovate on our design process? So it's not going to go into a lot of details. I can talk about these two topics separately for hours and hours, but I want to give you guys a very light touch that you can go and think about, maybe spark some ideas and see how you can get ahead of the curve. So let's talk about innovating on products, right? At the start of the digital age, it was easy to create products. Everything was new. We could build stuff from scratch. Problems were unique, and you can think about it almost as everything was a problem. And nowadays, it's just not so easy anymore. So many products across different industries have already had some serious problem-solving ninjas on them. These products can easily be used as best practice examples or templates that have been created. And you can copy and paste those into an existing product to solve for an existing product. So think of like your online shops, e-commerce websites, content websites, games, the list goes on. So technology and software has made it so easy for us also to to kind of use these copy and paste websites. Think of, WordPress and the templates that they use. Figma has a plugin where you type in a couple of words and it creates a design for you. And, I think so many designers are stuck in that realm of, building products, shipping products, getting it signed off. And, that's okay. But if you guys are anything like me, and I'm hoping some of you are, and that's the reason why you joined the chat, I want you guys to think greater than just solving old problems in old ways. So let's consider Jacob's law. So Jacob Nielsen from Norman and Nielsen Group said that users spend most of their time on other sites. This means that users prefer your site to work the same way as all the other sites they already know. Right, so let that sink in for a moment. I think my question to you guys would be, if we constantly design based on our competitor websites or apps or services or business models, without considering the key user needs and problems and pain points and environments, wouldn't we end up in an endless cycle of copy and paste websites and apps and services and business models? Wouldn't we just create, easily usable ones and not great experience ones? So on my screen here, I'm showing kind of 4 different apps. So these are streaming shows. Most of them you guys would know. Showmax is really a South African one, but Google Play, Netflix, Amazon Prime, you guys might know this. So you'll see all of them kind of use very similar, familiar patterns. So they've got search functionality, profiles, content lists, calls to action, etc., etc. But what gives them the edge? What would make you go to one over the other? Sure, you can argue it's the content that they offer, but what is the actual experience like when you interact with these different apps? So I want to speak to you about a very personal story again, that I went through while wanting to watch some TV one day. So I love movies and series and documentaries. And as a user, I have a choice to visit any of these. I've got the choice to choose any of them and go and search content and watch content. So I'm quite particular in how I watch different things and what I watch. So during the day, I might feel like, Armageddon tonight. And at night time, I'll go to my couch and I'll pop on one of these and I'd search for Armageddon. It's likely not going to be in one of my lists because I haven't saved it as a favorite. It's not going to be in a recommendation because I haven't looked for it recently, or anything like that. So search has become such a fundamental functionality in my life. And I almost want to zoom into it a bit. So this is what the search functionality looks like on the TV. Interesting, right? So they all use different search patterns. The fact that it wasn't the same wasn't a problem for me, because I can easily use any of them. It's quite intuitive to use. But what was the experience like when using them? So let me explain a bit more. When using Showmax, this one at the left bottom corner, and comparing it to some of the other apps, I realized the intense motor function that went into searching for something. So my remote only allows me to move left and right and up and down. And with the search pattern that they've created, it forces me to only use the left and right buttons to select any of the letters in that row. Even worse, when I get to the letter Z at the end of the row, I can't click right for it to wrap around to A. I have to click left again, all the way to get to the letter A. So it's quite laborsome to just search something like a term Armageddon, right? And it doesn't really utilize, the up and down buttons at all. So looking at Amazon and Netflix, the two top ones over here, they've used a very similar design pattern. So, they utilize the up, down, left, right buttons, and you can easily go to the letter that you want by using the combination of those 4 buttons. So it has already kind of increased the efficiency in which I can search something for. And then, boom, here comes Google Play and drops the mic and solves my biggest pain point when it comes to searching for a show, and that's speed. By combining something like predictive text over here, and it gives you the predictive letters that could potentially follow based on the predictive text, and using a QWERTY keyboard that is quite a familiar thing for me to use, I could search for anything in record time. So the point of the story that I'm sharing with you is that Showmax challenged and changed the search pattern, but it didn't really solve any of my needs. Google Play, on the other side, solved one of my key user needs, and it created such a halo effect for me that it's mostly my platform of choice now. I'll go there to search for any kind of movies. So what I'm saying is, use existing patterns and standards and traditions and competitors as inspiration and input, rather than a solution or an output. And use a process to uncover and solve for real problems that real users have. And just quit copy and pasting products, patterns, and standards without understanding the real user need behind it. Our design process has so much room to explore with great ideation techniques, such as How Might We, or Power of 10, or any other ideation technique available. A quick LinkedIn search shows that there are more than 9 million people that has designer in their title. And yes, given it could be interior designer and so, but how do we kind of stand out by understanding the problem and ideating on the problem, implementing it, and most importantly, validating it in the right way, and then just set new standards. Become the influencer and not just a follower. And this kind of brings me to part 2. How do we use our design process to get ahead, and how do we innovate on our design process? So, design processes, huh? Let's think about a design process, the holy grail of user experience, the make or break of our world. How can we use this? I recently read an article from a guy called Craig Phillips, and he said something so relatable that I wanted to share that with you. So he said, process has a sacred status in the Holy Temple. A lot of the time it feels like a thing that people aren't comfortable questioning in public, but in private, our relationships with process is complicated at best. How true is this, right? For so many reasons, it's necessary for us to innovate and evolve on our design process. Think about budget constraints and time constraints and clients, and in COVID time, like socioeconomic constraints. And sometimes it's just necessary to evolve and change your process and get with the times. So why don't we make the process work for us? I'm not saying to, throw the process out with the bathwater, but how do we innovate on the process without losing the foundation? So I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to give you a moment just to reflect on it. What does your design process look like? How many steps does it have? Do you guys have a number in mind? 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7? You won't be wrong. Design processes are often different. It's personal, it's contextual, and that's okay, as long as they have the same foundation. So how do we bend the process to work for us? How do we evolve? How do we innovate? How do we make it work with clients and budgets and COVID? Well, firstly, know the process. But secondly, might I be as bold as to say that you are the user of your design process? If we have trusted our design process to solve for so many real-world, real user problems, why can't we trust the process to change the process? Let's consider an in-the-moment example. As part of a typical design process, we often meet with our customers or users in two places. One where we gather context while doing research, and the other one really saying, how do we meet with them when we're doing validation and want to test our designs? So one of the key activities that we've done in the past was to do guerrilla testing. So, you will go into a coffee shop, you will chat to someone that's waiting in the queue to buy coffee and ask them, hey, can we just have a quick chat? Or can I just show you some stuff and you can give me some feedback on it? And you'd buy them coffee to thank them for their time. But in the midst of a global pandemic and, remote work being a real thing, you can't just walk up to people anymore and offer to buy them coffee, thanking them for their time. How do we solve for this? Consider the problem statement. In a time where we can no longer easily do guerrilla testing to validate our designs in a rapid, affordable way, how can we validate our designs? Now, I'm sure there's a couple of thoughts popping into your head, but unfortunately, the session is just too short to kind of figure out a problem like this. So I would urge you guys to solve this problem when you come across it in your teams or projects, and connect with me afterwards and share how you've done it. Perhaps we can evolve the design process as a collective after the session today and solve for one activity in our design process that is just not working so well anymore. This guerrilla testing example holds true for any kind of constraints that you might get in your design process. So whenever you're having client constraints or budget constraints, phrase it as a problem statement. Ideate on it, design for it, implement it, and validate it. And if it's necessary, iterate. If it works, then you have evolved not only your design process, but you have evolved as a designer. So the two things that I want you all to check out with in your card today is on how to think like a problem solver and not only a designer. One, solve for a need rather than designing for a norm by understanding user needs and innovating on possible solutions and not copy and pasting unnecessarily. Two, use your design process to evolve and innovate on your design process and make it work for you. You are ultimately the user of your process. And lastly, I want to say adapt or try. There's nothing wrong with trying anything. Don't be afraid to explore, color outside of the lines, challenge the status quo. And most importantly, don't be afraid to try and be anything but ordinary. Thanks for listening to my talk. And you guys are more than welcome to reach out, connect with me. And yeah, I'm sure there's some questions.
Yeah, actually, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Jamie. It was really, really cool, very, very inspiring, very refreshing, and very honest. So yeah, unfortunately, we're a little bit running out of time, so I'm going to ask maybe just one question. So it's a question from Adesola. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. How do I make profit without killing passion?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I think, passion comes from absolutely loving to do stuff that we always do. And unfortunately, in your career, there would be times that you would probably have to, work on projects or with clients that doesn't necessarily align with who you are as a person or what you are passionate about. I would say that, and the interesting thing about that, the more projects you do like that, the more will end up coming your way. So I would say, build a strong portfolio with what you're passionate about, and share that with potential clients, and you can walk them through what you can potentially do and sell that, whilst making money doing stuff that you don't necessarily like.
Got it. I think it's a really great advice, and I'm really sorry that there's no time to answer all other questions, but I really invite you guys to connect with Jamie and answer her those questions directly. Thank you so much.